Finally, I've been trying to reach you. We have so much to catch up on. Where have you been?
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be speaking about all things perfectionism. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. Is it good? Is it bad? How to deal with it? How to stop it? And all things to do with perfectionism basically. Firstly, hope you had a really good day or slash week whenever you're watching this, and yeah, let's get right into the video. One of the reasons we're speaking about perfectionism is because I have previously dealt with this in the past, and I feel like it's something we don't speak about often enough, and whenever we do speak about it, it's in a good light, like a good sense, but nobody talks about the downsides of being a perfectionist and how immobilizing it is. Firstly, actually, this is the second time me filming this video, because the first time I just felt I didn't do it justice, and I feel like it's too important of a topic to not do it justice. So I was like, let me just go again. But let's get into a definition real quick so we have understanding. So perfectionism refers to the tendency to set excessively high standards for oneself and others. Some perfectionists are able to achieve high levels of success because of the lofty goals they strive to meet. Others struggle with low self-esteem and problems in daily function when they inevitably make mistakes. So that is our definition. We're going to talk about places that it can possibly stem from, other characteristic traits that usually join together with it, and how to break free from perfectionism basically. I myself previously dealt with perfectionism for a number of years. I'm going to say probably from baby school. And you'd be like, how can a child deal with perfectionism? But let me tell you, so probably since baby school up until final year of university. Yeah, so that's like, I don't know how many years that is. That's a good number, over a decade basically, of dealing with perfectionism. In my younger years, I didn't have the verbiage to like put perfectionism beside what I was doing. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily in my mind. I didn't think, oh, I'm a perfectionist. It was until obviously later years, till like probably I'll say when I was around secondary school time, I would probably characterize myself as a perfectionist. Then obviously over reflection, over time, like now I'm an adult, I'm able to reflect over my actions and over like my previous life, and I'm able to see and understand where it came in. So perfectionism for me entered in when I was younger, in baby school, probably from junior infants upwards. I remember I used to be a child, like I used to go to the toilet all the time. Nowadays, like in secondary school and stuff, that wasn't me, but like in baby school, Blossom would go to the toilet probably like 4 or 5 times in a day. So always my hand up for toilet. I was also a very, very good student, so I had really, really good grades. I would excel. Academics was easy for me. I was very intelligent child, very intelligent person. I was a model student, you know what I mean? I was goody two shoes, whatever. So all teachers liked me. So whenever I had my hand up, like if I was to put my hand up, all my teachers would just assume that I was asking to go to the toilet. So they would never ask me what the reason for my hand was up. They would just say, yeah, Blossom, you can go to the toilet. And then they'll go help somebody else. That's usually how it went. But like, let's say 1 out of those 10 times that I'd have my hand up, it wasn't for the toilet. It was because I needed help with whatever we were working on in class, or whatever the teacher just discussed there. I didn't understand and I had a question. But my teacher's expectations of me was of excellence, and they never saw me and they never saw Blossom and then thought Blossom needs help. Do you know what I mean? Like they never attributed help to me. They never attributed struggle to me, just because of, again, usually in like primary school and stuff like that, you would have the same teachers. It's not like in secondary school or like university where your teachers change. You would have your teacher, they would teach you Irish, they'll teach you English, they'll teach you maths, they'll teach you all the subjects. Do you know what I mean? So for the whole year, the same teacher has you. So obviously they get to know you, they get to know how you are, they get to know how you operate. So because of how good of a student I was and the expectations that my teachers had of me, they never assumed that Blossom had her hand up for help. They always assumed Blossom had her hand up to go to the toilet. But sometimes I needed help. But obviously as a child, well, me anyways, I wasn't the kind to like be like, oh no, sorry miss, I actually need help in this end. I wouldn't correct the teacher basically. So I would just be like, oh, like whenever they said to me, I'm like, oh, I actually need help, but she's saying I should go to the toilet. So I would get up, walk my way down to the toilet, go to the bathroom. I'd wait around for like 1-2 minutes so it's believable. I'd wash my hands so my hands are wet. walk back. This whole time I haven't gone to the toilet because I don't need to go to the toilet. I'm just pretending. I'd walk back, sit down, and then I'd look at my work, what I was struggling with, and I'd be like, okay, let's tackle this. Because in my head, I was just assuming they were gonna assume that I need to go to the toilet. So I was just like, let me just cut all that out. Let me just tackle this work myself. So that's what I would do whenever I would have my hand up and I would need help, or I was stuck on something. My teachers would always attribute it to my hand being up for wanting to go to the toilet, and I would just always pretend, and then I'll come back and struggle and figure it out, and eventually I would figure out and I would understand it. So that was like me growing up a lot of the times. I feel like that's where perfectionism really started to sprout, where the seed started to be deposited in me. So when I was really young, those were like the ages of, I say, 6, 7. Yeah, so my teachers had very high expectations for me. I used to get student of the year like nearly every single year. I just did really good in school and academics, and then like everybody knew me to be quite good. So like if people needed homework, they'd come to me. If they needed help and stuff, teacher was busy, they'd come to me. If teacher had to leave class, I'd be in charge. Being good is great, but being good comes with its flaws. Do you know what I mean? Like being good, I can't, like being top of something is great, but there's a lot of responsibility with that, and I feel like as a child I had too much responsibility, so it hindered me more than it helped me. And another key moment as well that I can recollect now that I feel like definitely shaped that perfectionism in me as well is I remember again, I was really good at sport, and I really love sports. I love sports day particularly. And I'm very competitive as well.
I'm gonna need an iPhone 15.
So I loved sports day, and this was, I think, first class sports day. We had obviously all the races. We had egg and spoon race, relay race, three-legged race. There was so many races, wheelbarrow race. There were so many races that you could do, and then the regular just one-on-one race. I was competing, I was winning, I was coming first. If I was not first, I was coming second. If I wasn't second, I was coming third. I was always in the top 3, but mainly I was coming first. I was winning. I was so happy, you know. I was in my elements. Cool. Next thing you know, one of the girls starts crying. She's crying, she's throwing a fit, she was throwing a tantrum. Essentially, she was crying because she hadn't won anything. You have to remember again, I wasn't the only one winning. There's 3 prizes. There's first, second, and third. Some even races there was 4th. So there was 2 to 3 other pupils that were also winning. My teacher then decided, or thought, that the best thing to do was that since this girl was crying and Blossom is winning, even though I wasn't the only one winning, again, first, second, and third, there was other people winning, but Blossom is winning and she's winning too many things. So they decided that the next race, that everybody else was starting here and Blossom was going to start back here. Everybody had a 10-second advantage over me. Can you imagine? That girl still didn't win the race. I got moved to the back because you cried and you still didn't win the race. Anyways, they put me behind. Bear in mind, this is like a 6, 7-year-old. Doing this as a 6, 7-year-old, whatever. And I was the youngest in my class. So you put the youngest in your class, again, I'm mature, whatever. So they thought it was fine. Everybody started here. I was put behind to start. They still allowed them 5 seconds before I could run. This is them. Everybody else is on this line. I'm on this line. And I'm not allowed to go until 5 seconds. What? Anyways, so the race goes, ring the bell, they run, 5 seconds, they're like, Blossom, you can run. I remember the whole time I felt so defeated. I was like, what? How is this fair? How is this any fair? But I remember I was like, because of this, I'm gonna make sure I win this race. Obviously, did I win? No. I came third. I didn't come first. But then I remember I didn't get my medal. She didn't give me a medal because she gave the other girl a participation medal. So they did first, second, and then they gave that girl that was crying a participation medal, or like it was like it was like best sportsmanship. They gave her that. And I remember I just felt so targeted, and I just felt so like I don't know how to describe it, but I just felt so some type of way. Because till this day I'll never forget that race. But I felt a kind of way. From that, on top of the expectations that I knew my teachers around me had of me, I feel like that's when that perfectionism started to really bind and grip me. And then it followed me throughout education. It followed me everywhere. So I would just not ask for help anymore, like, because it became futile for me asking for help, because everybody would attribute my hand up for toilet. So then I was like, this is wasting my time. I'm tired of pretending to go to the bathroom. I'm tired of doing this. So I would just, if I was stuck, I'm gonna sit there. I'm gonna sit there until I get it. Perfectionism likes to bond and link with control, and both of those also like to link with procrastination. So I was a person that I had to have control. If I was doing a question and say it was like question 1, question 2, question 3, you know, the way teachers always like, if you're stuck on question 1, go and do 2, 3, then come back to question 1. That was not an option for me. If I was doing 1, I had to finish 1 before I go on to 2. There was an order. I had to be in order, even though I'm spending so much time trying to crack my break. And sometimes, you know, if you take that break and you walk away and you go and do the other questions, then you're able to do this one. I just wasn't able to tackle that because those traits were just really strong in me. And then as well, the other thing is that I used to procrastinate so much. Oh my god, I would procrastinate crazy. I feel like it's a coping mechanism. If you're a perfectionist, you would know what I mean, because when something is so daunting for you to do, like the task seems unattainable, but you don't want to fail at doing the task, it just stops you in your tracks. That's why I say perfectionism is very immobilizing. Like, keeps you stagnant. That's the best word. It keeps you stagnant. There's a spirit of stagnation that comes behind it, and it would just keep me so stuck in where I was, because I would be afraid of possibly failing, or I'd be afraid of not doing it to the standard that I've set for myself, to the standard that I have of me, and the standard of other people have of me. It wasn't only my own standard. Other people had very high standards of me. Like, I would procrastinate doing a lot of stuff because if it wasn't gonna hit the way I needed it to, in my mind, I was basically trying to stop the inevitable, and the inevitable to me was failure. So I was trying to slow down as much as possible getting to doing it, because if I did it, I felt as though the level that I was doing it at was basically me failing, and I didn't want to arrive at being a failure, when in all totality, not doing it at all, I had already arrived at being a failure. And my best, or like what I was gonna produce, even though not as good as I would have thought, was still good. Do you know what I mean? And that's the problem with perfectionism. Oftentimes we won't put stuff forward. Let me not say we, because I'm no longer a perfectionist, but like oftentimes perfectionists wouldn't put stuff forward because they think it's not a good standard. No, not that it's not a good standard, they think it's not perfect, but in the reality of the world, it's quite a good standard. So that's where I feel like perfectionism began to grow roots in me back when I was very younger. That's when it entered. That's where the door opened up. I feel like it just comes with the ball game of being good at stuff. I was just very naturally good at stuff. I was naturally good at sports. I was naturally good at hobbies. If I picked up a hobby, I would excel at it. If I picked up anything, really, I would naturally excel at it. It was very seldom that I wasn't good at stuff that I started. Do you know what I mean? Like, naturally I would just be very good at stuff. Academics was so easy for me. I breezed through academics, especially in my younger years. So that's where the door opened for me as well. I could perceive everybody else had high expectations for me. My parents, my friends, my family, everybody knew Blossom was smart, Blossom was this, Blossom was this. My report cards always came back good. Do you know what I mean? So I identified early on, I didn't have the grace for mistakes. I didn't have the grace for failure. I didn't have the grace for help. I didn't have the grace for a lower standard than what I had already been doing. I already knew that those graces that were allotted to people that maybe are mediocre, or people who needed help, or people who were operating at lower standard, I wasn't allowed those graces because, again, the perception of me was being quite perfect, quote unquote. So that's where it came in. Now, perfectionism, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Let's get into this. I feel like perfectionism in the world is often celebrated. People strive to be a perfectionist. People find it a good character trait to be a perfectionist because of the body of work that's produced. Like, usually the work perfectionists produce is quite good. It's really in a league of its own. But at what cost? And I feel like we don't talk about the cost often. People usually idolize perfectionists because of what they produce, but they don't see the internal battles, they don't see the stagnancy, they don't see all the behind the scenes. And for those reasons, I think that perfectionism is a curse more than it is a blessing. It's not a characteristic trait that I would think that other people would want, because once you're in the shoes, you will see how bad it is, how destabilizing it is, how immobilizing it is, how much stagnation comes with it. It's in the territory. So I feel like, yeah, society often celebrates and praises quote unquote perfectionists, but I feel like we need to get to a place and a time where we're knocking down those expectations of ourselves, because again, it's setting higher goals than what we can obtain. It's not a case that you're just setting high goals. It's like, say if Blossom, my capacity is this much, the capacity that I'm now setting myself is over the roof. And again, it's not bad to reach for the stars. I'm not saying don't reach for the stars. I'm not saying don't set high goals for yourself. But when you're setting stuff that are clearly not obtainable, it becomes detrimental to yourself. Like, one thing that perfectionists do is that they then equate their value to their work, their standard of work. So if I have an off day and I'm beating that's why I said nobody can be harder on me than I am on me. I know that for a fact. Nobody can beat me up more than I beat myself up. Yeah, I just could beat myself up. I could really get self detrimental. Not in the sense I wouldn't tear myself down, because I'm wonderfully and fearfully made, and I'm that girl, you know. So it wasn't that. Like, I feel like some people because of this suffer with low self-esteem. That wasn't me, that wasn't my case. But it's an instance, like, I just know, like, I wouldn't get over something. Like, if I messed up or did something that I feel like I had in my power not to do, I would not get over it. Other people have already gotten over that failure. That failure is still replaying in my mind. I'm like, how did you even get there? How did you even do that? You of all people, how did you do that? Like, I was just like, I was so embarrassed. And because of that as well, I wouldn't be able to speak to people about it because I feel as though it was not something that I should have even have done. There's a song by, I forget his name, I'll look for it now, but he talks about how this thorn in my flesh, the only thing I have left, and I cry for you. Anyways, he's talking about a thorn in his flesh that he can't talk about, he can't speak about because of all the perceptions that are of him. It's hard for him to speak. So I feel like as well, it's a spirit that closes the mouth of an individual. It's a very restrictive spirit in all its aspects. It will restrict you in movement, it will restrict you in speech, it just restricts you in every aspect. I can't go to my friends telling them I'm feeling this, that, the other, when the perception of Blossom is she's strong, she's this, she's this, she's that. How am I going to you guys breaking down if I'm the one that's always picking you up when you're breaking down? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. So I feel like speaking about stuff that was happening with me was very hard for me to do. Voicing stuff about me was very hard for me to do just because of this. And I feel like as well, I used to be a people pleaser. I think again, perfectionism, people pleasing, control, procrastination, they go together. I used to be a people pleaser so bad. Like, people's perceptions of me was very, very, very important to me. So I would strive to please people. I would strive to meet the standards they set of me. Even if those standards were not obtainable, I would strive to meet that because you've set that standard for me. It's probably even another reason why I couldn't tell my teacher that I didn't need to go to the toilet, because you're telling me I need to go to the toilet, I'll go to the toilet, you know what I mean? But it just destabilized me a lot, especially in life, and it stopped me from doing a lot of stuff because again, the standards that I was setting for myself were just way too high. So then I felt as though I was drowning. I felt as though I was weighed down a lot at the time. Like, I was really, really weighed down because of the expectation of others. And you know the way the Bible talks about, to whom much is given, much is expected. That's what I felt like much was expected of me because of all that I was given, you know, all the talents I was given, all the graces I was given. Much was then expected of me, and I can't say that that's wrong now, that people expect highly of me when I performed highly. Like, you would only expect really highly of a racehorse that was winning all their prizes. Because they were winning all their prizes, you're not going to expect highly of the brunt of the litter, because they're the brunt of the litter. But if a racehorse is always winning the races, they're always top of their form, they're always doing that, then there's high expectations for that. Usually then it'll get extra privileges, it's going to go for more training, it's going to be put into all that stuff. And that's where I feel like those were the benefits. My teachers used to give me opportunities that other people wouldn't have. There were certain graces that I was allotted, so if I forgot homework, they would leave me off because it's not in my nature to do so. If I was late, they would leave me off because again, Blossom is good in everywhere else. Like, I was given special treatment and special privileges because how well I performed. But then at the same time, the high expectations, the high perceptions of me, everything else also weighed me down. So that's what I'm saying, it's a curse more than it is a blessing, because yes, you produce good work, but at what cost? Yes, you produce great work, but then how detrimental is it being to your being? Do you know what I mean? And then I feel as though as well, like, because the standard of perfectionism is an unattainable one, you are forever going to be in a cycle of stagnancy. No matter how far you move, there's still an element of being weighed down because you're chained to those expectations. Like, imagine a chain and it's wrapped around your body, and all the expectations that you have of yourself, all the expectations that others have of you, is now what's holding you down. That's weighing you down. It's an anchor. So it's forever anchoring you to that point, forever anchoring you to that expectation. And that's why it's very detrimental, because if you don't meet those expectations, you start beating yourself up, you stay thinking about that, you're not going to move on, you're not going to go and do other stuff that you want to do, you're not fearful of doing other stuff. And I feel as well like fear was a big element for me. I was so fearful of mediocrity. I was like, me being mediocre was just not in my vocabulary. Mediocrity and me just didn't sit well. I didn't want to be mediocre, and I felt like as well around me I saw a lot of people that were okay with being mediocre. Society as a whole is just very okay with being mediocre. I would say like people are fine with failing as long as the whole class fails. Like, you know, when like you get your test result back and you see you fail, and then you're feeling bad, you're feeling sad, but then you go around, ask your friends, you're like, oh, I failed too, and you go around, whole class failed, then you're like, it's not me then, it's not me problem. So everybody's fine with being mediocre because everybody else is mediocre, and it's like, okay, the ones that then break free and are being excellent and are achieving high, those are the ones that are doing too much. Those are the ones that are they're just trying so hard, they're try hard, they're this, they're that. Whereas no, they just want better for themselves. So I feel like, especially growing up, what I saw was a lot of mediocrity. It appalled me, to say the least. I despised mediocrity, so much so that I feared it. I despised it, but then I feared it. That was a problem. I was so afraid of mediocrity that I ran so far away from it that I then ran into the clutches of perfectionism, which is no better. I feel like perfectionism and mediocrity are on the same scale they balance different ways. Perfectionism, usually it's for high achievers, people who loads of expectations are for them. Everybody around them has very high expectations for them. They produce good work. They're usually naturally good at stuff. They then strive to be perfectionists, and then it usually is quite self-deprecating for them. On the other spectrum, you find people who nobody expects anything for them. Everybody overlooks them. Nobody really treats them as special. They're always forgotten. Even stuff that they believe in themselves for, other people don't believe that they have the capacity to do so. Then they start feeling inadequate. They have low self-esteem. They hate themselves. It's just two damaging ends. One produces high quality stuff. The other produces nothing. But both of them are chipping at their core. So yeah, I felt as though I was always measuring up to a standard that was impossible to meet. And we know as believers, like we know, like I knew from young, like perfectionism is not even something that I can even obtain. My works can never obtain perfectionism. All of the workings of my hand, like from today to tomorrow, from the day I was born to the day I die, I never can come and say that I'm perfect, because I'm not. The only person that was perfect, who died perfect, who was born perfect, was Jesus Christ. He came perfect, he left perfect, he remains perfect. Whereas me, Blossom, was never the case. And I feel like as well, like I can think that something is perfect, and then I can go to somebody tomorrow and they'll pick out that, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that, oh, this I would change, this I would change. So for you to be perfect across the board to everybody's standard, because remember, like what I deem to be perfect and somebody else deems to be perfect are two different things. Do you know what I mean? A mediocre person can deem a bit of effort to be perfect, whereas a high achiever can deem what that person did as nothing. So like if I was then striving to be perfect, that means I would have to meet perfection across every single board, across everybody's perspective. It would have to be universally I'm perfect, that whatever I put forward universally, that would be counted to be perfect, and that's just not obtainable. And for so long I was striving for it, but what I was truly seeking was excellence. I was seeking just to be excellent. And I feel like sometimes we confuse perfectionism with excellence, and we think that they're the same thing, when in hindsight they are not. They're not even synonyms. We think they're synonyms. They're not. They're not interchangeable. Perfectionism and excellence are not the same, but we often think they are, and I feel like that's where we get into trouble. But like, for example, Daniel in the Bible, he was known to be excellent. He was excellent. He was esteemed to be an excellent individual, but he was never described as perfect. He was described as excellence. He was never described as perfect. There is a difference. Even King David, like King David was excellent. Like he was excellent at playing the harp. He was an excellent servant to Saul. He was excellent in many of the workings of his hands, but he was never deemed to be perfect. He was a man after God's own heart, but lust drove him to kill the husband of one of the maidens that he was lusting over. Would a perfect man do that? No. Jesus Christ, on the other hand, he was perfect. His actions were perfect. His execution was perfect. His speech was perfect. Everything he did was perfect. I am perfected through Christ Jesus, and that is the only way. My work can never make me perfect. And I feel like that's what I struggled with a lot of the time, thinking that I can't measure up to perfection. And even if I did measure up to perfection 1% of the time, I cannot maintain perfectionism. I could never, even if I was able to get something to a high standard, I would never be able to maintain it. And when the standards started dropping, that's when you started chipping at yourself. Okay, sorry, we're back. The battery died. But yeah, one of the ways that like it dealt with me severely was in academics. And I feel like it was so easy to measure, because obviously in academics you are given work, you are then graded by that work, and then you have to like, you get your grade back, so it's easy to track it. So for me in academics, especially in university, I feel like that's when I really butt heads with perfectionism. That's when it came to the forefront. So like for many years since my like youth, it was stirring, it was growing. It came to a point where it was unignorable. Like I knew that, yeah, this is a problem. Like I was like, yeah, I could recognize this was a problem, because in college what was happening was that I was not turning in work because I just felt as though I couldn't do it to the standard that I had set for myself, and the standard that I knew my teachers also expected of me. Like secondary school and college are two different ball games, like two different years. Like in secondary school, your intelligence can carry you. You don't need to study, you don't need to do anything. Your intelligence will carry you. College, not so much. You have to put a bit more work in. It's a different, the way that they work is different. And as well, secondary school, you know your teacher knows you for a long time, so they've dealt with you for many years. Whereas in lecture halls, they're so big, there's so many people, most of them won't even recognize you. But again, because I'm a model student, I'm a good student, I was known by most of my lecturers, so they had an expectation for me as well in regards to my work. And I feel like that pressure further hindered me. So I would be like, say if I had an essay, it was 2,000 words, in my mind I'd have the essay written up, I would know what I want to talk about, I would start procrastinating, because I didn't think it was going to be of a standard of an A. I was at a place where if it wasn't an A, forget it, forget about it,
forget it, which is the problem. Forget it.
If it wasn't an A, leave that grade at home. Basically I was willing, and it wasn't even that I was willing, I did it. I'm talking as if I didn't do it. I would not submit work if I thought it had a possibility of getting a C, even if it was a B grade, even if it was like an A- grade, I wasn't submitting that work. To me, even though it makes no sense, trust me, it makes no sense, but back then, you have to remember, I was constrained by this thought process. So for me, no grade was better than a C grade, because I can say that, oh, the reason that I had no grade is because, oh, I didn't do the work. If I did the work, I would have gotten an A. If I did the work, I would have gotten this mark. Do you know what I mean? It was like a cop out for me. I could be like, if I had tried, if I had applied myself, if I had done it, I would have got that A. And that's why as well I feel like perfectionists procrastinate as well, is because even if I do end up submitting that work, if I get a B, it's because I did it the night before. If I had the month like everybody else did, if I worked on it for a month's time, yeah, I would have got that A. It's an excuse, and you would procrastinate the work, because then you're giving yourself less time. You know, people always say, I work better under pressure, even though I do work better under pressure. But sometimes learn, not every day you have to be under pressure. Not every day do you have to have a tiny time constraint to then produce something. Say if you have a month's time to turn in assignments, I have a month. Especially me, I can do an assignment quite quickly. So if I have a month, it's just like, oh, well, I have so much time, too much time. I had too much time. There was not enough pressure for me to like force myself to break out of perfectionism if I needed to be. So if perfectionism was holding me, having that much amount of time was too free reign. I had too much time. So because of that amount of time, there was no pressure for me to now say like, okay, I have to do this kind of vibe. But whereas if it was a case of like, I have one night, I have 6 hours, I have to stay up all night. I know that the deadline is at the end, like the deadline is in the morning. So I gotta push every atom of me that I must produce this work, otherwise I fail. So it's not that I wanted to fail, I never wanted to fail, but if I had an excuse of the reason why I failed, and the excuse was that it was a case of I just didn't get the chance to do the work, then I did the work and I failed. To me, doing the work and failing was worse than not doing the work at all, because then that means that what I gave was a failable standard, and that to me was just didn't sit right with my body, didn't sit right with my spirit, didn't sit right with me. So I would prefer not to do anything, and it kept me in a place of stagnation for such a long time, especially in my academic career. It kept me stagnant, it kept me delayed. Once I recognized that it was a real problem, and I feel like if I could interview my friends, I remember there's times they were looking at me, they were, when they look at, they were scared. They're like, Blossom, what the hell? Like, the way they were looking at me, I was like, yeah, this is a problem. Like, because nobody could beg me to do the work. For example, I have some stubborn friends, and I have some friends that you need to push them, they'll do the work eventually. If I wasn't on board with me doing the work, no matter what you said, no matter what anybody did, no matter how many I remember, my lecturers would give me extension upon extension. It was making it worse, because giving me extension and then giving me another section and giving me another, it was making it worse, because to me it's like, you failed the first one, you failed the second deadline, look at yourself, look at that. Like, imagine you have to reduce yourself to this is how I felt like. So some of them would give me so much grace. In those graces, it wasn't helping, because it was in the mind. I had such a mind block, like it would stop me from doing the work, even if I knew the answer. That's the problem. I knew the answer, I knew how to write it, and sometimes it wasn't even a case of I thought the work was low, but once I got to that point, it was very hard to get out. So I remember when I really recognized that this was a problem, I was failing university, I was delayed, I was failing, let me not say failing in the university, that's a bit dramatic, but yeah, like I was failing classes. And again, like, you have to recognize, for me, university was never hard for me. Till this day, I always say university wasn't hard, it wasn't challenging, it wasn't intellectually challenging for me. That was never the problem. The problem was my mind. The problem was that I was in a prison in my own mind, and I have a very strong mind, I'm very strong-willed. So imagine being locked in a very strong-willed person's mind. Like, it was tough. The battle was me against me. And I feel like a lot of times we talk about how comparison is the thief of all joy, and whenever we're talking about that, we're talking about comparing ourselves to other people, and that is true. But I feel like for me, I never had to compare myself to anybody else. I always knew I was in a league of my own, and I feel like that's how you have to be in life. You have to recognize that you're running your own separate race, so your life doesn't compare to anybody else's. So I was always in a league of my own, and I knew that. But what would happen was that I was now comparing me against me, and again, I'm quite good at stuff. So imagine holding yourself to a standard consecutively all the time. It's not obtainable. It's just not obtainable. So yeah, in college it came to a point where if I don't kill this perfectionism, I'm not going to graduate. Like, I was not going to graduate if I don't kill this thing, because it was delaying me so much. The struggle was my mind. How did I break free? I had to let go of control. Again, perfectionists usually have a control issue. I had to let go of control. I had to give my control onto God. I had to recognize that my works as well wasn't what was qualifying me. And again, as Christians, we know that, like, perfectionism is not obtainable. Jesus Christ, the only one that has been perfect and forever will be perfect. I had to rescind my control over to him, yeah, I just had to give up control. Once I gave God control and I gave him the free will, it started to break off of me. I had to also lower my standards of myself. I still have high standards of myself, but before I had extremely high standards of myself, unattainable standards of myself. I still have quite high standards for myself. I think I will go far. I believe that I will do this. I believe I'll be excellent. But I started striving for good and not striving for perfectionism, because like the Bible talks about how God made the heavens and the earth and he said it was good. He made man and he said it was good. Good is more better than what we think it to be. And I don't mean good in the sense of human way. I mean good in the sense that God described the heavens and the earth to be good. That's what I started striving for. I started to strive for excellence, not for perfectionism. When I started striving for excellence, I was able to now break free of the constraints that perfectionism was holding me in. What it reminds me of is like a constricting sphere, like it's as if a snake wraps around your whole being and you're literally like this. It makes you feel like if you're constrained in what you're doing. And I had to start recognizing that growth is better than stability. And what does that mean? Because oftentimes I would want everything stable. I would want everything to go like this. I didn't like this. I didn't like this. I wanted this across the playing field. But then that hindered me, because then I can't grow. I wasn't giving myself the avenue to grow. I wasn't giving myself the grace to grow. And growth is better than stability because you're progressing all the time. Whereas stability, sometimes you're just plateauing. You're just going through the motions. There's never a spike, there's never a drop, there's never nothing. And as well, you learn from your mistakes. True failure is not necessarily getting something wrong. True failure is when you stop in the fact that you've gotten something wrong. If I try at something and I fail and I never try again, that's when I failed. Whereas if I try at something, I fail, I get back up again, I keep going. I cannot say I'm a failure because now I've progressed. Do you know what I mean? Whenever I've done something and I fail at an aspect of it, now I know what I should improve on. Now I know what I can learn. Now I know where to focus my efforts on, and usually what I produce the next time is better than the first, and it's quicker. Usually the turnaround is quicker. So yeah, perfectionism also stops you from growing. It stops you from progressing. It stops you from having any sort of development. I learned in life, give yourself grace as well. If you are a friend of somebody who you can recognize they have tendencies to be a perfectionist, or they are dealing with perfectionism, what I say is give them grace. Give them more grace than you would ordinarily give them. Give them more grace than what they would ask for, because they're not going to ask for grace. So give them more as well. Try not to impose your expectations upon them. And it's not bad. I'm not saying don't have expectations for your friends and don't want them to do good, but oftentimes perfectionists, they'll internalize those standards and then they now have even higher standards that they can't obtain. The ones that they already gave themselves, they can't obtain. Now they've joined your own on top. It's not possible. Don't put them on a pedestal, because that's what happens oftentimes. You be putting us on pedestals and it dehumanizes us as well. A lot of people expected me to be perfect across the board all the time. So whenever I showed any signs of humanity, it really shocked them to the core. Like, I'm human too. I feel like people forget, like, I'm not a robot, I'm human too. And then if you yourself are somebody who has dealt with perfectionism, what I'll say is give yourself grace. Rescind your control. Once you give up control, it becomes so much easier. Rescind control, give it back to God. Pray about it. Be very offensive in your stance. Don't wait on the defense, but be on the offense. Lower your standards for yourself. I'm not saying that you should now become mediocre. I'm not saying that you should now not do anything at all, but let it be a case of that you show up and you do your best, and that's what you aim to do. Do your best. Present what is your version of good, and allow God to bring the increase. Allow yourself to grow. Give yourself room to grow, because imagine if I had a room and my room just fit me, literally just fit my body, my height and my width. I would be like this. I wouldn't be able to move. Even to breathe, would I even be able to breathe? I'd feel so constricted all the time. Whereas if I had a room that's really big, I can grow into that space, and then when I've outgrown that space, I then move into a bigger space. That's how we should aim to move in life. And I remember somebody said something and it stuck with me. They were like, God needs a moving vessel, because even if you're moving in the wrong direction, he can redirect you. Whereas if you're a stagnant vessel, like, look at it like a stone. If something is stagnant and it's not moving, to now get that momentum for it to even begin to move, for it to begin to roll, is another battle in itself. Whereas if you're rolling and you're moving, you're going in the wrong direction, a wind can blow and you're back on path. Do you know what I mean? But if you're stagnant, if you're like a car, your battery's dead, you haven't been moved in a while, you haven't been turned on in a while, that's a whole nother wahala. So movement is better than stagnancy, and in that movement, just pray that you're guided and pray that you're in the right direction. But yeah, guys, that's me. That's perfectionism. Hopefully that helped, and hopefully in life we can seek for balance, because balance in itself is better than everything else. If we seek for balance, if we strive for balance, we as a people will be happier. And if we seek for excellence, not perfectionism, we will still be able to produce good work, but not at a cost. It will be good work and we will have peace of mind. It'll be good work and we won't be stagnant. We can keep moving. So yeah, give yourself grace. Allow others to give you grace. Remember, lean on the Lord remember that your works don't define you. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I hope you learned something. I pray and I really hope that anybody who is dealing with perfectionism, that God will begin to touch you now. He'll begin to heal you, and that spirit will break off of you. And anybody who's in a stagnant position, even if it is in the case of that you feel that you're less than, also God will help you with your self-esteem, and He'll begin to bring you back onto your identity. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, guys. See you next time. Remember, you are blessed, so be a blessing unto others. And like, subscribe, share, and also comment down below your thoughts, your comments. If you also previously dealt with perfectionism before, tell people what helped you, any tips and tricks that I may have forgotten about. And yeah, see you on the next one, guys.
Anyways, I gotta go now. Talk to you later.